Yo, yo.
There we go. Great. Thanks so much for
Hey,
doing.
yeah, of course, man. Just before we start as well, man, like I just wanted to say thank you. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I was an early part of the Hatch cohort for the internships. I interned at Bupa. I think I was like second or third year uni at the time. And I don't know if you guys knew this, but Hatch was actually a loophole for an international student to get work experience because it was very, very tough for me to get any job or anywhere, any experience. And just being on a visa, and y'all really helped me just get that experience and understand what the corporate world looked like, and make money when I was in college and whatnot. And it was like my real first internship that I ever had. So just wanted to say thank you before we started. Like it really was quite informative for me. Yeah.
Oh, dude, I really appreciate that. It means a lot. I mean, like that story right there, that's the reason we started the company, because we wanted to help people at that stage, like get a leg up and get access to opportunity that otherwise they wouldn't have been able to. And the international student thing's so stupid. Like
I know, it's fucking crazy.
So I talked to so many companies, they'd be like, well, do you have international students or do you block them out? We're like, no, of course we have them. They're like, well, we don't really like to hire them because then it's a pain in the ass for the visas. And I would just shut them down and be like, that's stupid. Like they're great people. It doesn't matter. Like if they're awesome, give them a visa. And then they're like, oh yeah, okay, we will. Okay. So
they're worried about having to deal with compliance later and like talk to legal about it. Like they're worried, but I think a big issue, super big tangent here, but like it just in America in general is like just not really capitalizing on immigration, not capitalizing on how much smart talent there is, in this world. And, we really, again, think long-term, like it's so worth it for these people, but they're worried about the little, logistics and operational things that'll get in the way. And I as an international student myself, I have very strong feelings about this. Yeah.
Well, I'm really happy. How did you, given it was so early on, like how did you hear about Hatch? How did you come across it?
I can't even, if I'm being honest, I cannot really remember. It might have been through UCIT or some other, I'm sure you guys were marketing through it that way. I knew, I can't really remember exactly how I heard about y'all, but I knew there were a few UCIT people working there at the time, and ended up, I think, applying and just applying and getting that opportunity. I remember going to your office. There was like a second floor, there was like a little patio out in the back, and y'all were doing brainstorming. I think I was the second cohort, because the first cohort was doing some sort of like revision exercise or some sort of like, and I just remember I think, was there a dog there or something?
My dog.
Was it your dog? Yeah, I remember that from years ago, man. So anyways, thanks for just doing that, man.
Thanks for saying that.
It was really, really awesome. Yeah.
Thanks for saying that. Okay, well, let's kick off. So I've got a couple of questions that I'm keen to work through. I think you've seen them before, so you've got a good sense of what I want to ask. The goal for us here is to capture some really nice sound bites from you that we can then use in different marketing materials. So it's not like we would play the whole interview from start to end. We would just take snippets of key moments of your experience that are worth sharing. And we'll do this as a fairly organic conversation. I'll use the questions as a skeleton, but we might find ourselves going left or right along the way. So to kick off, do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name is Alan. I currently do sales at a company called Pave. We are in the compensation space, and formerly, was kind of born in Australia, moved all over the world, and just currently reside in San Francisco, where I'm, figuring out my career, as many of us are doing, and enjoying the process on the way.
Wonderful. So when you first moved to San Francisco, how did you break into tech? What did you do that helped you, and like what lessons did you take from that?
Yeah, so when I first moved to San Francisco, I actually really didn't have anything lined up for myself. I was a grad with no grad job, and really what I ended up doing, the first step was I knew I needed to make money to pay rent, and without anything really set up and not really being sure what I wanted to do, I actually interned. And the way I got that internship was I listened to this podcast called My First Million that I really liked. And I cold emailed Sam Parr, the founder, just telling him that, hey, I would like to work for you. I'd like to be your intern and help with your podcast. And ended up getting the opportunity that way, making $20 an hour. And that was my first real experience breaking into tech.
Yeah. And like, what made you cut through? Like, did the founder get a lot of requests like that? And he chose to look at yours, or like what made you stand out?
Yeah, great question. So with Sam, his whole thing is because the hustle was a newsletter business. His whole strength was copywriting, and he loved sharing a lot of tips online. And I actually took his template on how to cold email people and used that to email him. And I think that definitely stood out in terms of just being very proactive and hinting at the fact that, hey, I did my homework, I know what I'm doing, and I just really was proactive about wanting to work for him and be around folks like him.
That's cool. And was having an intern role an important first starting point? Like, what did that do for you?
Yeah, I mean, it reminded me that I really needed to get my stuff together and get a real job, definitely. And so part of that process was I was, interning and getting experience there. I knew I just wanted to meet people and get involved. Why did I move to San Francisco in the first place? Is to meet incredible people that I can be inspired by and work with. So, but part of that process was actually working at a startup. So the same time I was interning, I ended up helping my friend as employee number one at a mental health care startup. So the day would look like Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 at the office interning, helping create this podcast, and after work, taking the Cal train down to Stanford and working on this startup, pre-funding, so no salary until like 10, 11, and doing that like 5-6 times a week. So it was definitely taught me how to work hard, what hard work really meant. I was living in a house with like 5 other people. It was just teaching me the grind, and really was inspiring. Like, hey, like let's like figure out how to, like, obviously this is the first step, but I need to like really get it out of here and create a path for myself. And it was really just informative because it was really tough. Yeah.
It sounds like you did a good job of just putting yourself in different places, like in different teams, like getting to know different people, just kind of putting yourself out there in the world, and seeing what like came off it. Like, would that be fair to say?
100% accurate. I think I've always loved tinkering, running projects. I mean, all throughout uni, I had a quote unquote startup called Lazy Liquor. We're doing liquor delivery for college parties, because afterwards I identified there. I ran an Instagram page to sort of see if I like doing marketing, because that's what I studied, marketing, and grew that to 80,000 and was trying to do deals off of that. So I think I was always really intellectually stimulated by trying new things. And so, yeah, I'd definitely say I've always been very interested in just trying out different opportunities to see, with the objective of figuring out what I like.
Yeah. And just that last point, the objective of figuring out what you liked, like, has it helped you do that? Like, what's been the relationship between trying out all these different things and then, in the end, landing somewhere?
Yeah, 1,000,000%. Yeah, 100%. I think the ultimate goal, right, is like, finding out what you're good at and what you enjoy. And if you can find a job that's the intersection of that, that's, really honestly the best place to be. And it really helped, right? I tried starting a marketing agency when I had no idea what I was doing as a student at UCID, did a terrible job, got yelled at by clients, got fired by clients, realized that this probably wasn't for me. I tried corporate before, which I also really didn't like as well. And there's a lot of, just checking off the list of like, you're not going to know until you try. And it was finally until, obviously getting a lot of help and feedback from folks around me, where I decided to lean into, my personality and sort of find a job that I think I could thrive in, just given, what I'm like as a person. And sales really was that path that I've landed on, and been doing it for a few years and loving it so far.
Was there a particular experience that pointed you to sales, where in the experience you'd learned that about yourself, that you really liked the skill and the life of a salesperson?
Yeah, I think at the startup I was at prior to my current job at Prairie Health, we were really trying to figure out go-to-market. We, again, did not know really what we were doing. And part of what my job was taking, interviews and client calls for folks that, were in the mental health space. And anytime I realized I, had a chance to talk to people and I felt energetic and, loved just doing that in general, just growing up, that was a really big hint for me in terms of, really leaning in and trusting my gut on following sort of what made the most sense. And, operationally, like, what did I do? I listed out all possible jobs that would require, this sort of external facing capacity as part of the job. And sales really was one of the ones where I said, hey, there's a lot of upside here, and I think I could give it a crack. Yeah.
It's really cool that you kind of listened to your gut around what things gave you joy, and then you tried to connect it to what jobs out there like would provide that opportunity for you. Is it like, when you were studying, like, is that where you expected to land, or was it a bit of a surprise for you?
No, not at all. I had no idea what I wanted to do all throughout uni.
Yeah.
I transparently wasn't the best student. All I loved doing was running these little side gigs and projects outside of work and sorry, outside of school. And so no, I never, really imagined that I'll end up in sales. I think sales, especially in Australia, I think anywhere outside the tech world has a pretty like not the best reputation. It's kind of known as being like a sleazy like used car salesperson, right? That's where everyone thinks about. But after being in tech for a few years and doing tech sales, software sales, it's really the complete opposite. It's really just opens up so much opportunity. People from all backgrounds all are able to do it, and selling is such an important skill to have. So I'm glad I landed here. I did not expect to be here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I started my career in sales before I went to
Yeah.
university. I did a year in sales, and
Yeah.
probably the number one thing I learned was that people think sales is about like being persuasive and pushy, but it's actually about listening, and it's about
and
like understanding people and their motives. And you can use that skill like in so many places of your life, not just within like sales itself.
Yeah, I think problem solving is really truly what sales is all about. And if you don't believe that your product can help solve people's problems, then you shouldn't be in sales. We actually test for that in our SDRs. Where we're interviewing them, like their problem solving skills. We'll ask them, it's a hot day in July. You're in Miami Beach. You have a bunch of hot chocolate in your trunk. How you sell it? And based on what they say, like some people get real creative, and you can really get a hint of like, how their propensity towards problem solving. And I think it's a really big indicator for sales.
Yeah. I think actually a grounding in sales helped me to be a founder of a product company, because it sort of is about understanding people, listening to their needs, and then thinking about how a product can meet those needs and problem solving around like what that solution looks like. I think it's a super like relevant skill in like a whole lot of broad use cases. Karen.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, you finish off.
Yeah. No, I think thank you for that. I think one of the, again, building onto that a little bit, there's a reputation in sales of being just like, oh, it's like an EQ thing, right? But after working at Pave, I've been very lucky to work with some of the just most best salespeople I've ever been. Learning how incredibly process-driven sales is, how much skill is in it, and the reality being, it's actually a relatively new field in terms of how folks have developed frameworks around how to cold call, how to cold email, how to run a sales process, what's the most efficient way to do things. Like, for example, a sales enablement role just like wasn't a thing 5 years ago. And so once I really started getting into the weeds of sales, it's become just so much more interesting to me the more and more I get to know about it. But yes, I think there's still a bad reputation around it, but I would thoroughly encourage people to look into it. It's such a fascinating skill set.
It sounds like being at Pave within an organization that has experienced like skilled salespeople above you that you can learn from is an important factor of you yourself developing those skills.
100% is the pure reason why I decided to work at Pave was actually because of my current head of sales, Armand. When I was trying to leave Prairie and I wanted to figure out where to go next, I went and said, hey, let me let smarter people make decisions for me. Let me go look at all the top 20 VCs and look at who they invested in the last 6 months. I looked through every single company, and with the companies I was interested in, I would look through their LinkedIn to see who worked there. And while scrolling through Paves, I saw Armand Farouk, his name, which I was like, wait, hold on a second. Like, my friends are sending me this podcast, 30 Minutes to President's Club. That's him. He runs the sales podcast. He probably knows what he's talking about if he has a popular sales podcast. So I cold emailed him. And, the amount of learning that I've had just from him and all the other folks that have been on our team, it's just been like incredible. And yes, that was like the sole reason why I didn't really know what Pave did, to be honest. I was like, oh, HR, cool. Like, I want to work for this guy. That was really what drove my decision.
Yeah. Look, that's really consistent with my own experience in my career, where I've been lucky to work for some really great organizations early in my career, but more than that, I was lucky to work for some really great managers who took the time to teach me, develop me, and just kind of show me the ropes. And there's that old saying that you don't quit a company, you quit a manager. And I think it's so important, like early in your career when you're joining a job, to know who you're going to be working for, and like are they invested in your development, and is it going to be a relationship that helps you grow? So it sounds like that was your mindset too.
That was a big part of it. And even like the little things, right? Like, we can get into the nitty gritty of like during your interview, things to look out for. When I was reaching out to all those people, it was towards Christmas, or else towards the end of the year, people were taking off holiday. And so many folks I cold emailed told me, hey, let's chat in January. Hey, let's schedule something later out. when I was in this interview process with Pave, I met with Armand on a Friday, and they were all in Tahoe. They were all doing this thing together in Tahoe. And he's like, hey, I'm gonna move into the next stage. Matt, the founder, emailed me and said, hey, can I interview you on your Monday, my Sunday? And I was like, wow, the urgency was like, that is the type of people I want to work with. And, things like that, you can pick up during the interview process to really figure out, what kind of people you're going to be spending a lot of time with them. You should probably know these things before you join.
Yeah, really cool. Hey, while we're talking about interviews, are there any questions that you like to ask employers in an interview that, you want to share?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one of my favorite things to ask is trying to, with the objective of understanding, where they're at as in an organization. You can look at funding numbers, you can look at all these, logos they have on their website, but truly, like, what is happening within the organization? I want to know what the vibe is like. And so the question I remember asking is, out of 10, where would you say, how happy are you with the company's progress right now? And typically folks would like, will give you an answer at 8 to 9 or 7, whatever. And the follow-up question being, what needs to happen for you to go from the 8 to a 10, right? What needs to change? And I think really putting that context in place allows employers to truly tell you about how they feel. Why is it an 8? Oh, it's 8 because of all these positive reasons. But what does the company need to do to add those additional 2 points to make it a 10? And that really, I think, gives context around how really a company is doing and performing.
I bet you caught some people off guard. It's such a good, incisive question. It makes them be like honest in the moment. Did you get like interesting responses?
Yeah, I think that's really the objective here. I think I learned it from someone on the internet. I found this question and I thought it was incredibly useful, and I still do that to this day. When I'm trying to get a real opinion is allowing people to fill in the blank, right? Allowing people to explain their answers as opposed to just giving you a kind of spiel that maybe is not really accurate. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Really good. Any other questions you'd like to ask?
Yeah, I think this one's a pretty basic one. I think a lot of people suggest, but I think it shows great initiative. It's like, if I were to start this job tomorrow, what does success look like, right? Like, what does someone in my role do to really, be good at their job and be considered good at their job? And I think that's one way to really show that you care and you really want to understand what it takes. But operationally, you can get tangible results and goals and things to work towards. And a sort of a variation of this question I remember I like asking, especially when I first started at Pave, was, I was getting interviewed by all these AEs, right? These account executives, folks who've been in sales for a few years. I would ask them like, hey, when you were working with an SDR back in the day, like, what did your favorite SDR do? And also the inverse as well, like, what did your least favorite SDRs do? Like, what were their habits? And you can really scope out like good habits and bad habits and create a framework for yourself to work towards these very, maybe just 2 or 3 points of good habits that, lead oftentimes to success.
That's great. These are super good questions. Any others you want to share?
Love that. Yeah, I got one more that I prepared. Really, I think this is more playing into the empathy side of things. I think a lot of times interviewers, folks who are being interviewed kind of view it as, hey, like, I need to really like be at the mercy of the interviewer. I truly think it's you're also evaluating where you want to work. I think especially early in your career when you don't have that much confidence yet, don't have that much validation, it's very tough to stand up for yourself. But I think really leaning into the, hey, this is just two humans talking to each other is a big piece here. And so one thing, what I think can show empathy is doing your homework, right? Like looking at it, seeing like, where they're from, where they used to work, and just asking questions around their prior experience and asking about the interviewer, not just the company, right? So, hey, Adam, you started the Iconic. Like, what was the number one lesson that you learned from your time there that has made you successful at your current job? Things like that, where you're really trying to make it personal, make it about them. And I think every time you put it on the interviewer themselves, like, you can really get some good insights into what you're looking for.
Love that. Yeah, I love that approach of like really trying to connect with the person and show your interest in them through a bit of prep work you've done. As someone who does a lot of interviewing, I always appreciate that. And it generally builds rapport and authentic connection much faster, which is really cool.
Always do your homework.
Always do your homework. We've talked a bit about Pave. I want to come back to it now. So you were, or you are employee number 12 at Pave, and it's obviously experienced very fast growth. So what challenges have you experienced in growing a startup from such an early stage?
Yeah, so great question. I think at a macro level, the beauty of working at a high growth startup is you get to fail a lot faster than you would typically at any other job, right? You go to a large corporation, you're getting put into this 8-week training and onboarding that they've done a million times, and it's built to scale, right? To make it very easy for you to become, proficient at your role. But when you're at a startup, you're messing up all the time, literally all the time. And the amount, I think, of times I've messed up, it's like I cannot even count on my hands, like how embarrassing I was when I first started. I think one example is, was learning, like, how do I, like, a big challenge was, how do I present myself to be a useful employee? And I think a lot of that came from being massively insecure about myself. I joined a company where everyone was older than me. I was the youngest person there. Everyone had work experience, worked at really great companies. And I was super insecure about just my career, myself, transparently. And so what I used to do is I used to, in all hands, like, call out or challenge my CEO. and just because to me, I'm like, oh, I need to show them that I'm capable and I'm smart. And I'm so lucky and just so grateful that my colleagues were, like, very open with giving me good feedback and being like, hey, this is not the right way to do it, but here are the right ways for you to sort of, become useful and be good at your job and just be a good colleague and be a good person. So, I think that was one challenge I had, just like learning how to grow into myself, right? How to become confident, how to be okay with being myself at the company. And because really when you start leaning into your strengths, that's when I think you start excelling. And I had a really tough time doing that when I first started.
It's a great reflection. It's also really good that you're so self-aware over that, like, development. I feel like a lot of people might not be so brave to, like, really look at their own shortcomings with that sort of development-oriented mindset, which I think's really cool. Was there any other sort of personal growth or development that you feel like you needed to experience in order to be part of, like, the journey that you're on at Pave?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of, like, figuring out, like, what you're good at and what you're not good at, that part of experience is really important. Within sales as well, there's so many things that I think I enjoy, but also I totally dislike as well. And my team's gonna hate me if they hear this, but I hate cold calling. Like, I really don't like it, right? But one of the challenges I had to come to face was, like, you got to do it. Like, this is part of your job, and learning how to, like, be efficient and do well at things that you're not necessarily strong at or you're not necessarily good at was a huge challenge there as well. And learning, especially, I got a lot of great lessons from Arm on, like, how do you make this just a more acceptable, a better experience for yourself, right? Can you time block it to 50 dials in an hour? And when you're trying to do that, you don't have to drag it on, so it turns into 3 hours or 4 hours of pain, right? Like, learning all these almost coping mechanisms within your professional skill set, I think, is very important as well. And just knowing that, like, you're not going to be good at everything, you're not going to like everything, but how do you get around and become good at those things that you're not good at?
Yeah,
it's very important.
That's great. That's also very self-aware. Like, how do you put the almost like the systems or processes or tricks in place around you to help you be good at something that otherwise naturally you might, like, lean away from? I think that's a really good reflection.
Yeah, and I think the older, the more experience you get as well, like, a big part of that I'm learning now is, like, delegating work, like delegating and leaning into other people's strengths and working together as a team. Like, that's something I've struggled with a ton, where because I think I've performed well as an IC, I think this is just the one way to get everything done. I just want to do everything myself. And in reality, you're just slowing yourself down and slowing the whole team down. And so that's something, another sort of process I'm currently, like, trying to figure out and learn is a challenge for me as well.
Yeah, one of the things that really resonates about just what you're sharing here is, in my experience, humility is one of the most important traits of, like, a high growth, high performance individual. Like the courage to be able to look at yourself and say, where am I falling short? Or, like, what could I be doing better? Or what, where are my weaknesses? Like that sort of is really in opposition to arrogance, where arrogance will often just say, oh, I'm good at everything, I don't need it, I don't need to improve. And in my experience, that level of humility, like, leads to a much faster development and performance curve. So, like, yes, I'm really enjoying that you're sort of showing that level of
Thank you.
Cool.
I think it's so important. I think any sort of mindfulness exercise, therapy, journaling, like anything that, where you're really just putting yourself out there and being comfortable with like, I guess being yourself is so important. And but I think part of this is a very important key ingredient to this is having folks around you that are open to giving you good feedback and not bad feedback, and have, the right, their heart is in the right place. They want to help develop you and they want to help, be honest with you. That's so important. And, I can be as real as I can, but if there's not people helping me, I wouldn't be here today.
Totally. Just one more question on the paid experience. So you were talking before about the difference in being thrown into a startup versus a much more structured entry point in a corporate. So given that you've been thrown early stage into a high growth startup, what kind of like projects or initiatives have you had the opportunity to own that maybe you wouldn't have had that chance if it was like a larger corporate?
Yeah, great question. I think transparently, my development and like sort of rising through and getting more opportunities, it's been just so fast compared to what could happen. So I've been here for maybe since a year and a half, maybe since January last year. Typically, this is if I've been here for 18 months and like a Salesforce, for example, I'm still an SDR, right? You're still going through the process because they're telling you this is the steps you got to take. I think a project that I was working on recently that again had to build up a lot of confidence and trust within my leadership team to allow me to do this is I worked on an acquisition of a company. So we acquired one of the biggest businesses competitors in our space, and Armand, my head of sales, was like, hey, like you're the big 0 to 1 guy, like, hey, come help figure out how are we going to convert as many, like all 4,000 of these people and integrate them into our systems as best as possible. And I had no idea what I was doing. That was very hard. And but the fact that I again asked a ton of questions and was learning like how do I segment people, how do I prioritize, and you're forced to be in a spot where you really have to deliver and learn, or else there's a lot on the line. I would never have gotten this opportunity if it wasn't for being at Pave. I mean, I'm literally like a year, like 6 months out of being an SDR. Like it's not normal, but the fact that they've invested a lot in me and I put the work in as well. There's just a lot of great opportunities that I've been able to receive and get.
That's awesome. Did you enjoy it, like that M&A piece of work?
It was really interesting. I think I've never been a part of something like that, and it was just like a big old puzzle that you had to figure out, right? Like, okay, what are all the different possibilities of people if they can or they can't integrate, or actually being on the calls and iterating on the spot and training the other folks to do it. It was such a massive project that I've never handled before. I'm on something of a similar scale or in a different context now. Recently, I got put on it last week, and the learnings that you had from those experiences, I'm taking like 2-3 of those frameworks that I did for this last project to now, and I'm accomplishing like 4 weeks worth of work what was for the last project in like 3 days now, because you just learn so much faster with experience. So yeah, definitely always trying to put myself out there, and I think it's really where the fun happens. It's not in the day-to-day, man. It's stuff like this.
Love that. I kind of want to wrap up by asking a couple of questions on hiring. So just talking about hiring in the go-to-market space to start off with, we often see in go-to-market roles that managers want at least 2 years experience. So what advice would you give to those managers to help them look beyond on-paper experience and into someone's potential?
Yeah, great question. So I personally believe that sales, especially in go-to-market, is a skill that can be taught. I truly believe that. And really what you're looking for, and that at least I personally have found success in with our own teams is hiring folks that have the intangible, right? So things like their attitude, their energy, right? There's one that I like to talk about, which is, does this candidate come with batteries included or not, right? When they come, do they feel charged? They help other folks feel more positive and want to work better and put more effort in, help each other out? Or do they come and drain energy out of the rest of the team? And what ends up being, you're a manager and you have a team of folks and you got to like sit on their calls, you got to make sure they're doing okay and spend extra time working on with them. I think really hiring folks with a good foundation of things like humility, like just humbleness, teamwork, things like those intangible skills, like that's truly, I think, what folks should be focusing on. And look, I think entry-level roles like SDR roles, they're trajectory hires anyways. Like they're not supposed to come in knowing like what you're doing, right? Like SDRs come in, and eventually you'll want them to be AEs selling, selling your software, selling your product. So you're really just looking for folks that can have a high ceiling, and I think that's really where folks should be focusing instead of just looking straight up on the resume.
Love that. I love that idea of like, do they come with batteries included? That immediately makes me think of someone in our team, Hannah, who's just got that like positive energy that's infectious to everyone around her. And I also love that idea of like, how high is their ceiling, and acknowledging that they have a lot of room for growth. And if you invest into them, then they're going to deliver a lot of value back.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's the opposite is true too. And look, I've worked with plenty of folks who comes with batteries not included. You got to like encourage them, spend so much energy to make sure like for them to do their everyday job that they're hired for. Like you rather just want someone that can, really help everyone enjoy working together. Like you work a lot, we work 8 to 10 hours every single day, 5 days a week. The work is very hard, especially if you want to join a startup. Like you might as well work with folks that you want to hang out with, right?
Yeah.
And enjoy, right?
So if you were talking to a friend who was thinking about a career in sales, how would you pitch it? How would you sell? If it is really hard work, how would you sell it to someone else?
Yeah, I think sales is a job that, a skill set that you can, one, learn. If you really want to, it is a skill that you can learn. So it is accessible. And two, it is, I feel like, one of the most useful skill sets that you can really have. If you look at any job, right? So let's macro view, let's look at a founder, right? What is a founder doing when they're creating a company? They're selling candidates on the vision of the business. They're selling potential customers on the vision of the product, right? You're selling investors on the future of your company. Even when it comes down to a more micro level, say you're a manager or you're someone working within a company and you're trying to sell, get initiative through. What are you doing? You're selling your vision for the problem that you're going to solve and how you're going to do it and who you're going to do it with. And I think it's such a useful skill that that you can really apply to anything in life. And for me too, my goal is, hey, let me become a AE and let me learn the full sales cycle, and maybe I'm going to do something else. But I know that the skill set there is truly important, and something that I can use for just the rest of my life.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm basically using a sales skill set every day as a founder. So I definitely see that one playing out in reality.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think my one last two, if the sort of big vision sort of, out there in the clouds view isn't for you, I totally get it. It's also a high risk, high reward job, right? Like salespeople within a tech business probably makes more, as a rep, you probably make more money than a lot of other people in the company. And the good ones are walking away with, high 6 figures, 7 figures at big companies. You can make a lot of money and make a really good living out of sales. And I have multiple folks on my team at Pave, again, super high growth startup that's doing very well, backed by a bunch of great investors that have like never been to college. Multiple, so many. And so I think that sort of opportunity for such high reward outcome is just incredible. I really think it is.
And it's great. It's therefore like a job that values all backgrounds. Like you don't have to have a particular degree. Like it sort of says good people come from anywhere. And like, if you're good, like we'll take you and we'll make you great and we'll show you the reward for it.
Yeah. And I think that really just shows what I was saying earlier. Like, it really doesn't matter like what's on your resume, man. Like if you got the right attitude and you really want to learn and you have a propensity to want to get after it, like anyone can become a salesperson. I truly believe that.
Yeah. Last question about hiring. Just thinking back to when you were looking for jobs yourself, if you had like a magic wand and you could change anything about the experience of job hunting and applying to jobs, what would you want to change? What really pained you or pissed you off?
Yeah, I think, wow, great question. So I got very lucky in terms of learning from my roommate, who was really good and really methodical about finding, how to figure out where good companies lie. And the way I did that was filtering via VCs who, back which companies did they back? Let's go work for those companies. But I really wish there was a better way for companies, really to showcase and attract talent in a way where it's not just off a Crunchbase or off a LinkedIn page. A better way to recruit, truly, or a better way to tell their story. I think so much of the recruiting process is about the people. If it wasn't for me meeting Matt, if it wasn't for me talking to Armand on, during my interviews, like I would not be convinced to want to work at Pave. And I just wish there was a better way to sort of, translate that energy and the culture and, what that brings, in a day-to-day work environment to a candidate who is just coming out of college and really has no idea what working is even about. I don't know how to solve that problem. I think it's very difficult. transparently, our company, we sell a product that helps with recruiting as well, but that's such a huge pain point, I think, for folks, where you're missing out on so much good talent, and so much good talent is missing out on good job opportunities because they don't really know what it's like working there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's definitely one of the problems we're trying to solve through our product, is like, how do you communicate what it would be like to work for a particular manager or team in an authentic way, as opposed to just relying on a generic job description that probably someone in HR that isn't actually in that team.
Yeah, I mean, it's so part of our company, and what we do is we have this concept of hug of John. John, JAWN, just from the East Coast. You probably showed what that means, and we just say that word all the time. And so what we do is during the interview process, we really we'll text the candidate, we'll get other folks on the team to add them on LinkedIn, and we give them that big hug, that hug of love. And that's one way that's been effective for us for recruiting, because they can feel like what it's like working here and the energy that we have throughout the process. But not every company does that. I think there's tons of great companies out there that are amazing to work for, but you just you can't feel that energy. That it's so hard to do it, especially through Zoom. Like, how are you supposed to feel that? And yeah, so it is tough. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Last question, because we're just about out of time, but I might just ask you a bit of a zoom out question. So I guess, a lot of people watching this will be early in their own career. Thinking about the journey you've had to date to get you where you are, what advice would you want to give them?
Yeah, good question. I would really say, bias for action. That's definitely one of the big ones for me. If there's that person that you want to learn from, just email them. Like, chances are, if you're nice about it, especially when you're in college, people are going to give you time. People are going to give you half an hour, right? If there's a job opportunity that you think, or you want to learn about something, you want to go work somewhere, you want to know what it's like, just email them. There's so many tools out there for you to find out what someone's email is. It never hurts to try. And the worst thing they can say is no. And I think it's very salesy of me to say, but I really think that getting after it and getting consistent feedback is really the best way to figure out what's going to work best for you. So so if there's one phrase I can throw on a billboard, is just get after it. Yeah.
That's cool. I used to have a phrase that I would sort of use to give young people advice of, like, give more than you get. It's in, like, don't expect things are going to come to you, but like, put yourself out into the world and give more than you expect to get back. And when you do that consistently, then opportunities start opening for you.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And in the workplace, for your friends in college now, like, just be a giver, and the universe magically always returns favors back to you. And I don't want to be weird about it, but it truly is really what I've experienced as well. It's been amazing.
Yeah, awesome. Alan, this has been great, man. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights. We could probably do hours of this. I feel like you're a goldmine of them, but I really appreciate you being so honest and authentic with your own experience and passing it on.
Thank you, man. I mean, yeah, I really just want to, when I was in college, I remember the feeling of just not knowing what the hell is going on and feeling lost. And the way I got here was just folks, listening to podcasts, right? Listening to Tim Ferriss, listening to Ramit Sethi, all these folks, and reading books, and just trying to figure out what do I do? And so I just, want to pay for it. I want to give it back. And if, folks ever want to reach out to me on Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever, please. And I'm always happy to chat and help. And I get so much joy out of helping folks as well. So just really want to pay it forward. Beautiful. Well, hey, thanks so much for your time. And I'll likely be seeing you next time I'm in San Francisco. I'd love to grab a beer and hang out. It was a very quick road last time. So next time we'll have to do it over a beer. Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, I hope, hopefully, Mads, Harry, all those folks are helpful. I know you guys are, trying to get out here, and it's tough right now, especially with hiring. I know we're in the HR space as well. It's super hard, but I think you guys are doing awesome stuff, and just, I'm rooting for you. Just let me know if I can help with other things, man. I really want to see you guys win. Appreciate that, dude. Thanks again for your time. Yeah. Have a good night tonight. Yeah. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Catch you later. See you later. Bye.